why it is so important to explain to people that there is no this quality on the material level?
Oh, your English is good. That letter you wrote to me was really good English.
I didn't.
Who wrote it? Oh, so it was really good. So, well, dynamic duo. You know, it's like Batman and Robin. They work together. So, because people want equality, they want justice. They have to understand that if you really want equality, then and you want to be a rational human being, that there are intelligent people in the world who really want to be reasonable. They want to get it right. You know, they want knowledge. They want to understand things, the world as it really is. And so, if let's say I'm a sincere person. A lot of people, you know, they're beer heads, as we say. But they have beer in Israel, don't they? Yeah. They do. Yeah. So, if someone wants equality, and because people feel it, I mean, people feel in their heart that actually, despite all the differences, somehow we are all one. And so if you feel that, and it's actually a symptom of the mode of goodness. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 20, that he calls it sattvika jnanam, that knowledge, which in this context means like worldview, that those whose knowledge is in sattva guna, the mode of goodness, they see that yes, there is variety in this world, but behind that variety there's a oneness. And so basically anyone who is predominantly a good person, anyone who's just really a good person, they will feel that oneness. And they will realize that all these separations, like, you know, wars and fighting and people hate each other, this is artificial because we're all just one. So if you want that and you see it, you see the oneness and you want that oneness in the world, and yet you understand that the bodily identity can never be the basis for that oneness. And if you have any intellectual integrity, in other words, if someone is honest, if someone has integrity, if someone, you know, it matters to someone to get things right, and they understand that it's only on the platform of the soul that we really have a proper understanding of that quality which we want so much, that oneness, and that because our bodies are different. So it's the soul which unites all living beings. So again, it's like if you're learning to play a musical instrument, you know, don't do it like that, don't do it like this. So if you just, they had actually this in California, which is a remarkable place and sort of an inexhaustible source of silly ideas. And also a lot of good things, of course. So they had this self-esteem movement. They're like, the greatest sin you can commit is to somehow lower someone's self-esteem. And so they actually, they started in the schools, like public schools, children, where the teacher would never say to the student, you are wrong, or that's wrong. It's always, or that's bad. Like if the student gives the wrong answer, it's, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting answer, Johnny, but let's think about that. Or, okay, Johnny, you just kicked Judy in the face. Well, what were you feeling, Johnny? I mean, what did you... No, I'm not saying he was wrong to kick Judy in the face. I'm just saying that, you know, let's talk about it and tell me about your feelings. And so, you know, they had this whole thing, and the result was that they basically ruined, you know, a generation or half a generation of people, because in the real world, some things really are bad and some things really are wrong in the real world. And so when these children graduated and went out into the world, they were dysfunctional. And they became angry at the world, and they couldn't function. They were just, you know, they were really kind of ruined by this whole thing. And so I think people who are, again, we're looking for people who are Like that famous Vedic sage, Satyakama, which means a lover of truth. You know the story of Satyakama? Famous story from the Upanishads. Satyakama, his name was, there was this boy whose mother was really at the absolute bottom socially. She was a prostitute, and this is in like conservative Vedic culture, and he wanted to study the Vedas, and in those days only a Brahmin could study, and then you had to learn from a Brahmin. So he said to his mother, I want to study the Vedas, and he knew, like when you fill out an application for school, the first question, last name, first name, and so it was the same, it's always been that way in ancient times. So he said to his mother, what's our family name? Like, who are we? And of course, there was no question of someone in that social class studying, being accepted by a Brahmin. He was like the lowest. And so his mother said, well, that's a good question, Sonny. That's a really good question, and I don't really know who your father is, due to some,
professional problem.
Yeah, due to vocational issues. And so, but since my name is Jabala, then your name is Jaibali, because Sanskrit is like Kunti, Konteya, Pandu, Pandava, where they're called matronyms or patronyms, names made from the mother's name or the father's name. And so he said, well, she said, if you go to a guru, I guess just say your name's Jaibali. So he went to this teacher, and this is like in a very rigid sort of karma kanda culture where unless you're a Brahmin and a high class Brahmin, you couldn't be accepted. So this great guru said to him, what's your name, kid? Where are you from? Who's your dad? And so he said, he was so honest. He said, that's an interesting question. And I asked my mother that very question. And she said to me that she kind of was all over the place in her youth. And she doesn't really know who my father is. But since her name is Jabala, I'm Jaibali. Glad to meet you. And so this great guru said, you are so honest. Because he said, you are so honest that you're a Brahmana. And he actually became a great Vedic sage named Satyakama. His guru gave him the name Satyakama, lover of truth. And so ultimately, it's very simple. You believe in this, and yet that's not the explanation of it. This is the explanation of it. So, in other words, if you accept the principle of equality, then you actually are believing in a soul. You may not know it, you may not put it in those words, but that's what you're doing. When you say we're all equal, you really are talking about a soul. And then there's the example that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, Dehi nosmin yatha dehi, where he says that you have experience, you have direct experience that you were a child, you were an adolescent, you continued to be an adolescent for 20 years. I'm just kidding. So you were a child, you were an adolescent, and then you become an adult. And so, but you're the same person. Now, one thing which is sometimes said in academic philosophy, epistemology, like the philosophy of knowledge, how do you know? What does it mean to know something? That every person has a privileged or a special understanding of their own internal consciousness. In other words, other people may know you, someone may say, I really know you, but you directly experience your own existence as an individual person in a way that's beyond what any other person can experience. And at that deepest level, you know that you exist as an individual person. And that person, and you know that when you were 5 years old, that was you. You know it was you. And it's not like how do you prove it, because it's self-evident. It's the basis of everything else we try to study in the world. It's something which is immediately and self-evidently true. For example, the philosopher Descartes, René Descartes. You heard of him?
Just the name.
Oh, just the name. He was a nice guy. So, another guy. So, so Descartes, in the 17th century, in the 1600s, Europe was definitely coming out of the Dark Ages. I mean, it was already the Renaissance, and it wasn't just this like Monty Python movie. You know, it wasn't just like this total religious fanaticism. And so Descartes, he created this very interesting and in a sense very revolutionary project, philosophical project. He said, what if, for the moment, just for the purpose of what he called his meditation on truth, let me imagine, or let me say to myself, that everything that I think I know may not be true. Everything that I think I know may not be true. What if I doubt everything? This was very revolutionary because in those days, you know what the priest says, and you know the priest tells you, and the church tells you, and all that. And so to say, let me imagine that everything I believe I know, what if it's not true? And then he said, is there anything which I absolutely cannot doubt? Because I can doubt everything. You know, anything that you think you know, you can just say, well, what if that's not true? But is there something that I cannot rationally doubt? That if I doubt it, I'm just being an idiot. I'm not actually being fair. I'm not being reasonable. Is there anything that I cannot doubt? And so he said, yes, the first thing that I cannot doubt is, and then he said it in Latin, cogito ergo sum, that I'm thinking, therefore I exist. Because if I doubt the very fact that I'm thinking, so if I doubt, the act of doubting is a mental act. And so if I doubt anything, I must exist, because otherwise how could I doubt it? How could I be engaged in this mental activity? And therefore he said the fact that sum means like Spanish soy, it means that I exist. I can't doubt that I exist as an individual person. And then he went on to build a whole philosophy where I ultimately cannot doubt the soul, I cannot doubt God. But if you just stick to this, if you just stick to that point of that you exist, and you cannot doubt you exist, because by doubting it, you're proving it. So you exist, and you know more deeply, more powerfully and more basically than you know that you're in this room. You knew that you were a child, but it was you. And you know that then you grew into a teenager and all that. And so, yet your body's changed. Your body's completely trans. It's not that your baby body just stretched into your adult body. I mean, the skin, every 2 weeks, you're in new skin. So if someone's very romantic and, oh my God, I touched her. And then 2 weeks later, oh my God, I touched her again. But it's, the second time, you're touching a different skin. I mean, it's kind of gross, but that's the fact. So when you do the, Spieglein an der Wand, mirror, mirror on the wall, you know that thing? The Ahankara meditation. So when you look in the mirror, you are seeing a different face than you saw 2 weeks ago. It's a different face. And so therefore, because we know that we are the same person, I was a child, I was this or that, I was a juvenile delinquent. And so, we know it was me, but the body's completely different. And therefore, it's simply not possible that you are the body. It's simply not possible. And so, it's just, the real problem is not that people think differently. The problem is people don't think. Thinking is like, oh my God, you're thinking. That is so 20th century. So that's just the state of the world. And there are people who really want to know the truth. There's not like trillions of them, but there are people. And actually Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvidha bhajante mang jana sukriti, that 4 kinds of people approach me. And he said of those, the most dear is the one that approaches me because he or she really just wants to know me. They really, and not just like curiosity, but someone that just knows me or really wants to know me. It's like, for example, let's say you meet someone, and the person says, hey, you know, what's your name? Hey, where are you from? Hey, you know, what do you like to do? What's your favorite music? What's your favorite ice cream? You know, so someone can just be curious about you, but it's not the same thing as someone that really wants to know you. That really wants to know you. You know, really cares about you. I really want to know who you are. And so Krishna says that it's the soul that really wants to know me. Not just curious, but really wants to know me. That's the one who's most dear. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, if someone's not interested in philosophy, like, hey, man, you're just like stuck in your head, you know. I mean, if someone's like, because there are people like that, they're sort of cerebrally challenged, and so, you know, with every person, we just try to give them what they need. It's like, so we don't force. But if you meet someone that's intelligent and really cares about the truth, then we have to explain it. You understand?
I have a question.
Yes.
The intelligence is supposed to be above the feelings.
Intelligence? Above the feelings. Right, that's right.
But there are some people that they are like, the feeling side is really strong.
Yes.
So,
Kirtan. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, if people are like that, then we just try to give people whatever will help them. You know, that's personalism. So if someone, you know, just their feelings, then try to explain to them. You brought up a similar point. Yeah, I mean, how much Krishna loves them. The fact that Krishna says in the Bible, you know, Krishna loves us, and he's in our heart. And he's our best friend. I mean, if you think about it, we may have so many friends or family, but Krishna has been with us forever. And it's just like a child. I mean, if you have a child, the child may do so many crazy things. Of course, you know, you have Gopal. Let me see. Where's Gopal?
Doing crazy things.
He's doing some crazy thing. So, but you know, I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, you know, every child. But like the mother, the father, they always love their child, isn't it? They always, and so Krishna's like that. He always loves us. And here, like Gunavatar and Varshabhanavi, who are doing such wonderful service and really giving their own love and then giving their lives to so many people. And so on that level also, so it's like we somehow have to reach people. So whatever level they're on, we have to be there for them and just somehow try to reach them. But if someone has strong emotions, then engage those emotions for Krishna. Because if you have strong emotions, but I want to engage those emotions for Krishna, that decision to do it for Krishna, that is intelligence. So it's not that you have to be like an analytic philosopher and always be analyzing things. It's not that. But if you just make that simple decision that I should do this for Krishna, I should feel for Krishna, then that means that all of your emotions are actually governed by buddhi. You don't have to be like a thinker with clouds over his head or something. But if you just make that simple decision that I'm going to do whatever I do for Krishna, then your whole life is actually governed by buddhi. Yes.
Years ago, I heard a lecture by you about the guru, and you spoke about I don't remember the phrase, but if you practice what you preach.
Uh-oh.
And I don't remember the exact phrase in Sanskrit. How do you say? You practice what you preach.
Oh. What? What was it?
Acha pracha.
Oh, achara prachara. Achara means like good conduct, good behavior, and then prachara means preaching.
Okay, so my question is about Krishna West, and it's about the contradiction that I have when I'm speaking with someone. I don't feel that I'm lying or don't tell the truth, but I'm making it moderate or telling them what they have to hear.
Yeah.
Not what the real practice is. And
Well, give an example. What might you tell them?
I'm not telling about the regulations. I'm not telling them about really how to approach Krishna. I'm telling them...
You don't even tell them that cow dung is pure? It's the first thing.
No, only to ask, I would just suggest, according to your experience,
Yeah.
how should I approach them? How should I deal with this?
Even Prabhupada once wrote me a letter. In 1972, when I took sannyas at the mature age of 23. I took sannyas before my brain was fully formed. But anyway, that's probably why I took sannyas then. So if I would have had a fully formed brain, I might not have done it. So, but anyway, so then I wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and I said that I was going to preach in the universities. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, please, like, for the love of God, please do not present Krishna consciousness as just a bunch of rules. He said, Krishna consciousness is the most sublime philosophy. So, for example, we were just talking with a guy, that, let's say I'm driving my car. In California, there's a lot of mountains. There's actually 2 major mountain ranges on the coast range, and then the Sierra Nevada inland. So a lot of times you're driving on mountains. If you drive around California, you're going to drive on mountains. And so they have these signs like slow, dangerous curve. It's not a rule. It's not like, okay, some, malicious bureaucrat is just making me slow down here. It's not a rule. It's like, you want to live, slow down. And so I don't think of it as like a rule. It's not like some kind of bureaucratic rule. It's like, slow down, there's a dangerous curve. And so in my life, I mean, there are some people, and they bless every religion, and even other groups, and who just love rituals, love rules. They never met a rule they didn't like. And so It's like that definition of a priest. A priest is a person who has a deep fear that someone, somewhere, may be having a good time. So yes, I mean, there are people that just, this rule and that rule. I remember one time in Atlanta, I was GBC of Atlanta. The meaning of those songs I love so much, and still do, actually. I still love those songs. And so, the Bhakti program, and so she came to me one day and said, I'm really confused. And I said, why? She said, well, I thought I was joining like Bhakti Yoga, and I was, absolute truth and all that. And there's all these things, the girls are telling me in the ashram, like, oh my God, you drooled, while you were sleeping. So now, the ghosts are coming, and you got to do this and that, and this rule and that rule. And she was like, oh my God, this is like a zombie movie. So in that sense, the purpose of Krishna West is just give people the simple spiritual science. That's what Prabhupada said. He said, present Krishna consciousness to intelligent people as the most sublime philosophy. I can honestly say that everything I do in my life, I do for a good reason. If there's some kind of technical rule that makes no sense to me, I just like, obviously the 4 regular principles make sense to me, and I'm vegetarian, but the point is, some devotees have all these rules, this rule and that rule, and I just like, get a life. So, of course, there are basic rules that we should follow, we must follow if we want to be spiritually strong. I'm not talking about and Rupa Goswami talks about that. In the Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 6, Bhakti or Samrita Sindhu, there are basic principles which you really have to follow. But then there are other detailed things which are, they change. And so, oh my God, I was reading today someone's website. It's actually a nice devotee, intelligent, but it was like in Ekadasi, you should really only take milk and this kind of vegetables or fruit. And if you eat any other, even if it's an Ekadasi prasadam, the more you eat it, the more you lose the power of Ekadasi and this and that. It's like, oh my God. Just not eating grains is like, that's enough. Because I know myself, I don't have the health. If someone is enthusiastic and wants to completely fast, that's great. That's wonderful if they want to do that. Prabhupada never did it. And when Prabhupada was here, it was very simple. Don't eat grains and beans. Next. So, but then again, if someone wants to perform some special austerity or they're just attracted to it, or that, because some devotees sort of have the nature of tapasvi, they like austerities or they feel somehow it's helping them. And that's great. That's wonderful. But it's not something that everyone has to do. And so, like in my life, whatever I do because I have a very good reason to do it. So I don't see my life as following rules. I don't feel like I'm following rules. I just feel like I'm staying on the road. I'm staying on the road. I'm avoiding things, which obviously it's like when I'm on a road and I see that, oh, there's a cliff and it goes about 1,000 feet straight down. It's not that I don't drive over the cliff because it's a rule. It's because I don't want to kill myself. And I know if I do certain things, I'm going to really mess up my life. I'm going to suffer. I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to just create so many problems for myself. So why do it? Why do something if I know I'm just going to make myself unhappy and create all kinds of problems for myself and problems for other people? So Krishna consciousness is not rules. There are technically they're rules, but it's really just following the path. It's staying on the path. And like you come to an intersection, there's an arrow, like your GPS. That's all it is. Sadhana Bhakti, it's just a spiritual GPS. Like, you are 10 miles from Krishna Loka. And so if your GPS tells you, turn to the right, no, I'm not going to follow that. What? If you want to get there, it's to the right, stupid. And so, if you want to go there, it's to the right. And that's all Prabhupada's doing. Prabhupada didn't come to give us rules. Who cares about rules? All we care about is following the path. And so naturally, to stay on the path, you don't go too far this way, you don't go too far that way. As Dorothy said, you follow the yellow brick road. And you get to the supreme Oz. So, you understand? And also, another important thing is when we talk to people, it should be a dialogue, not a monologue. It's like, I just want to tell you. It's not just, it's like you go to a doctor and the doctor says, oh, I don't want to diagnose you. There's this medicine I always wanted to give somebody. And I really love this little green medicine. I just like to make people take this little green medicine. So it's not, if you're a doctor and you just like for some crazy reason just like to give out certain medicines, no, you got to find out what the patient needs. So it's not like I just want to tell somebody this. So, it's not being duplicitous. When you meet somebody, that's compassion. That's the compassion. What does this person need? And how can you know that unless you talk to the person? Because everyone has their fears, their hopes, they believe certain things, they don't, and so everyone's different. And that's why I think Varshabhanavi and Gunavatar have been so successful, because they're so personal. And they really care about each people. They don't just, you can't see other people just as theological categories. You are a fallen jiva. And I don't want to know anything more about you. That's all I need to know. You're a fallen jiva. You are a philosophical category. I'm going to deal with you as I just deal with you as a philosophical category. So that's the compassion also. That you care enough about people to really get to know them and to give them, as they say in America, TLC. You know what that is?
Tender loving care.
Tender loving curios. not to be confused with KFC, which is Actually, this is so gross, but it's true. The reason now they call it KFC and not Kentucky Fried Chicken is because the food is so artificial and plastic that legally in America they were forbidden to call it chicken because it's so plastic, the food. So, anyway, yuck. So, what time is it?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? At 10 o'clock I turn into a pump. What do I turn into?
Just a short one about the card.
About what?
I said just a short one about the card. Wasn't he responsible for the automaton?
The who?
The card. René Descartes.
Oh, Descartes.
Yeah, he spoke about the automaton theory.
Oh,
Cool. So why do we listen to him anyway?
Well, it's like if someone's a good doctor,
yeah, I know.
but a terrible massage. I mean, in other words, it's like he did some good things, but he also had some serious ignorance.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that.
But if I go to a good doctor,
from someone who said such a thing.
But you have to understand the age he lived in also.
Yeah.
I mean, people were so ignorant. For example, back then, like when I would give this example in Vasco da Gama, when he sailed to India, everyone in Europe believed that India was a Christian country. Because there was this legend that one of the apostles, James or something, went to India and converted the whole country. I mean, come on, don't be so stupid. Of course that's not, they could find out. It's because India was always trading with the Persian Gulf. And the Persian Gulf was always trading with, Turkey and everything, and Europe was trading with, and so, but for centuries, it's hard to imagine how ignorant these people were. And so in that sense, Descartes, considering the age he came from, was starting to make progress. Descartes was Catholic. He was a French Catholic, and you have Thomas Aquinas, who wrote the Summa Theologica, and which in its time was actually kind of revolutionary. So again, and it was Thomas Aquinas who, as I say, he baptized Aristotle, because because Aristotle was the philosopher. I mean, Plato was lost for a while, and then Plato came back. But so during the Middle Ages, Aristotle was just the philosopher. So if you said the philosopher, that was Aristotle. And Aristotle has this idea where there are different kinds of souls, and the souls of animals are not like spiritual souls. So the soul of an animal just means almost like its biological structure or its anatomical structure. And automatons, that animals aren't really persons. And so Thomas Aquinas just took it from Aristotle. I mean, Plato was more spiritual, but Aristotle was a little more materialistic. And so Aquinas took it from Aristotle, and then Descartes took it from Thomas Aquinas, because that was the doctrine of his church. And so...
So when you kick a dog, it screams just because of self-preservation and not because it has...
he was clueless about that. At the same time, there's two ways to look at it. You can say, well, here's this really intelligent person. How could he be so stupid about dogs or about other animals? Or you could say, here is someone in Europe at a time when they're just starting, it's a renaissance, of course, it's a renaissance by then, but they're just really coming out of these dark ages. They're coming out of this really abysmal ignorance. And the people are starting to think, and they're starting to reason, but they haven't really come out of it yet. I mean, Prabhupada, you know what the word renaissance means, right? Rebirth, renaissance, rebirth. And so actually, Prabhupada completed the Renaissance. I mean, basically, in ancient times, you had this advanced civilization, especially in Southern Europe, Greece and Rome, Athens and Rome. So you had this really advanced civilization in terms of literature and philosophy and art. I mean, in many ways, they certainly had their problems, serious, but still, in many ways, it was a very sophisticated civilization. And then the Roman Empire collapsed, the Germanic barbarians took over, and civilization just went, phew, it just dropped. And so you had this super sort of sophisticated culture, and within a few centuries, it was hard to find someone that could read and write. So it really, I mean, society really just collapsed. And there's a whole story how it started to come back. I mean, and then at a certain point, you know, Charlemagne, Charles the Great, and they start to build schools again. And so, but society really collapsed. And then, so around the 1300s, some like famous thinkers like, oh my God, you know, Petrarch and Dante. You know, Dante, the writer, and it started really in Italy, especially in Florence. And they began to think that, hey, wait a second. If you look back to that ancient civilization, those people are really intelligent. And look at now, it's like, oh my God. And so they realized that, they actually realized, I mean, they got to the point they realized that civilization really had collapsed. And I mean, it started earlier with the high Middle Ages and everything. So then, it was those people, way back then, they're the ones who created these names like the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. Why do they call it Middle Ages? Because it was in the middle between the great classical civilization and the rebirth of that civilization again, and that was the Renaissance. So those were their words, Renaissance. And in between these two great ages, you have the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. But the Renaissance is really ultimately a rebirth of Vedic culture. Because if you look at, for example, Roman religion, or even Greek religion, it's very much what I call Mediterranean Hinduism. I mean, it really is. And if you look at it, it's even the language, ancient Latin, I mean, Greek and Latin, it's very much like Sanskrit. I mean, not just like this word sounds like that word, but it goes into the like really deep grammar, the way the languages are organized. And I'm just giving you one simple example. Just one simple example between ancient Greek and Sanskrit. It's not just that so many words sound the same, like you have aham, which becomes ego. But in Sanskrit, it's an inflected language. I don't know Hebrew. That means instead of using, like you don't say to Krishna or unto Krishna, you say Krishnaya. Like you don't, so unto is a preposition. You don't say I bow unto Krishna or to Krishna. You say Namo Krishnaya. Or if Krishna is the subject of the sentence, like Krishna sees, Krishna pashyati, or I see Krishna, then you say pashye Krishnam. So when you put an M, Krishnam, it means it's the object of the verb, I see Krishna. Or if you say I go with Krishna, gache Krishnena. So Krishnena means with Krishna or by Krishna. Or Krishnaya, unto Krishna, or Krishnat, from Krishna, Krishnasya, of Krishna, like it belongs to Krishna. Or Krishne, in Krishna, like Krishne, Swadama, Upagate, and so on. So it's an inflected language. So Sanskrit has 8 cases. And if you look at those 8 grammatical cases, you find that 3 of them are very similar, namely the nominative, when the word, say Krishna or any noun, subject of the sentence, the accusative, when the word is the object of the verb, and the vocative, like Hey Krishna. Hey Krishna, Karuna, or for example, like Radha, a feminine word ending in a, if you're addressing the person, it becomes a, like Radhe. So what's interesting is you have these 3 cases, nominative, accusative, vocative, which are very similar to each other, and then the other 5 are similar in other ways. So there's like these 2 divisions. Exactly the same thing in Greek. Exactly the same thing in ancient Greek. Nominative, vocative, accusative, one group. The other ones, and they even make like they make endings in similar ways. So it's the similarity. It goes very deep. It goes into the deep grammar of the languages. It's not just that words are the same. And so, anyway, so if you talk about a renaissance, if you really want a rebirth of classical civilization, why not go all the way back and have a rebirth of the Vedic civilization? And so therefore, when Prabhupada came to America and started the movement, he was actually completing the Renaissance. So, I mean, from that point of view, so what I tell people in America, especially the gringos, you know, like the white Americans, is that this is not a foreign culture. This is actually, you know, this is like the original culture. So in that sense, we can see ourselves within history and understand what's going on. It's like you know, it's like if you look at a picture of yourself as taken from outer space, you're going to be very small. And so in the same way, we are within history. You know, we get absorbed in the moment, but actually we right now, it's just like right now we're on a planet. We are these little things on a big planet, and we're in the solar system, we're in a galaxy. We are actually inside of a galaxy right now, although we don't think about it so much. We think more like, I'm in this room. But we're actually in a galaxy, we're in a universe. Similarly, we are within history. We are inside of history right now. And so it's good to be able to explain to people, to show them this is where you are. It's like those maps, you are here. You know? Mapat. I saw that. So like you are here. So if you can locate yourself within history and then explain to people.
It's fantastic that you said about Prabhupada completing the Renaissance.
Now there is the 10,000 years.
Yeah.
It's a big work.
10,000 years to eat too much prasadam. So, I guess maybe we'll stop here for now. Anything else? Well, make an offer I can't refuse. Yes.
I seen 2 days back in television, internet, a priest from a temple abroad, and he was presenting Krishna Consciousness on television, and they said we are a sect of Hinduism. And
really, I'm glad somebody finally told me that.
So the way he spoke about it to the interviewer and his wife also, as introducing themselves as Hinduistic or
as
people who
what?
practice Hinduism.
Hindus.
Oh, really?
So it's very weird.
Oh, who did that? Who did it?
I think in Europe a lot of people, how do you say, think about themselves as.
Well, or the, yeah, you mean were these ISKCON devotees? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, they were, as I say, playing the Hindu card. It's if you look at how Lord Chaitanya dealt with it, when I mean even Lord Chaitanya, sometimes when he's speaking to Muslims, like they would say, "Oh, you're a Hindu," so he would just like talk to them because they couldn't understand anything else. But it's also good to, to explain how Hinduism is just a modern word and so on.
So it's difficult in Israel to preach to people that we are Hindu.
Oh, I'm not. I mean, I am not a Hindu.
Jewish.
Jewish. Yeah, it's. I always say that I had just wonderful, happy experiences in Judaism. So that's what I explained to speaking to an intelligent person today and saying that I'm just building on what I learned. It's not that sectarian idea that, okay, I'm rejecting this religion to take that religion. It's rather that, like I always say, Judaism is my Vartma Pradarshika Guru. Because I first learned about God, and I really experienced God. I experienced God in Judaism. And so there's no question of rejecting it. It's just a question of building. So when I was a child, when I was young, and I heard like Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, or that you should love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, I actually took it very seriously. And I mean, I remember it was inspiring to sing that Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, and all that. I mean, I used to love that. I was a little rabbi when I was 12 years old. I actually was. I used to lead the service for all the young people. I mean, they asked me to do that. I didn't just grab the position. But and when I used to go into the synagogue, we had a beautiful synagogue where I lived. It was a very nice Jewish neighborhood. And there was a beautiful synagogue. And when I went into the main synagogue, I really felt the presence of God. I mean, Krishna was really there, God was there, and I really felt God's presence there. And I knew that I was in a very special place, that somehow God is really especially manifest here. And I love the kirtans, I love the stories, and so there's no question of rejecting it. I mean, there's no question of rejecting something like that, but I'm just building on it. So that I took very seriously the idea that, loving God with all your heart, soul, and might. And so I've tried my best to understand what God is. Yes?
Weren't at some point weren't you confused
About
this new God, Krishna?
Oh, not at all. No problem. Because thank God. I grew up, I was a California Jew. And in a conservative synagogue. And it wasn't Reform, it was conservative. But I don't think I ever in my life doubted that there's one God. It was just obvious. In fact, when I was looking for God, I was studying world religions. I was in Berkeley, and I had come to a serious decision that I have to find God. I have to understand God. That's what it's all about. After I spent a summer in Europe, 1968, at the age of 20, and was it 20? I was 19. I kind of went off a cliff on a motorcycle and survived, and got held up at knife point in Tangiers, and somehow talked my way out of it, and went to the Arctic Circle, and so I had all these adventures, and after all this, I just decided that loved and lost, and so after all these experiences, I remember that I was in a train. I was coming back from North Africa, which of course I was in Tangier, so it's like a border town, but I found it a little like, no, I don't think I'll spend much time here. And so I was taking a train back to Madrid to get another train to Paris. And on the train, I remember there was this nice guy, about my age. He was an artist from Paris, and he just somehow liked me, wanted to travel with me. So we were traveling together. Although he didn't have enough money to go to North Africa, so I went alone. But so I was on the train. I still remember. I was a writer. I was like this intellectual and writing, and so I remember writing in my journal, like coming to a decision that I am going to try to understand God, and that is now the purpose of my life. That's what it's all about. Because I realize everything else is just superficial, and if I don't know what God is, I really don't know anything. So I came to that decision. And then I went back to the university. I had to stay in school because there was a Vietnam War going on, and I was too young to get my throat cut in a jungle. And so, although there's really no good age for that. So I had to stay in school. But I remember that became my life project, to find God. And every morning I'd wake up, and I had to walk to campus. And I remember every morning, as I was walking to campus, I was just meditating. What is God trying to understand? And actually, I gradually discovered that God is in the heart. I was doing like consciousness and just trying to find God. And I talked to all these different preachers, because Berkeley was just like a cosmic circus. It was like that bar scene in Star Wars. Except, it really was. All those creatures were there in Berkeley at the time. And I was talking, I went to the Hillel, the Jewish thing. I even talked, I had become so liberal and, so wild. I even talked to Christian preachers, and I was talking to everybody. Like, okay, tell me your best knowledge. And I was just like, I had no concept of sectarian religion. And, like there's false gods and real gods, and there's, the false religions. I wasn't thinking that way. I was just looking for God. And so intensely, and then after a few months of just looking, I was walking home one day. I lived on this beautiful street actually called Piedmont, near the campus. And someone came up to me, and a devotee came up to me and said, our guru is going to speak tonight. So can you come? And when I heard that, my first thought was, oh no, another Swami. Because when I was 18 years old, I took class, sociology, like beginning sociology. And so it was one of those little, little freshman classes. We had to go around to all these different religions, like Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, like Buddhist, Hindu, and just write a little report. It was, one of those little classes. And so for the Hindu side, I went to hear the Swami. And anyway, I went with my significant lady friend, and so we went to this program, and it was a Swami in a saffron robe, and he just sat there, and because I really wanted knowledge. Like, if you know something, say it. I had no patience for esoteric mystics. If you know it, just say it. And so he started saying, like in this high voice, everything is all right. There is no problem. Relax. And he just kept saying that and things like that, and there was no like philosophy. And so, I was young. I was 18 years old, and I was 18, and so I almost burst out laughing. Because I remember I was there with a girl, I started drawing funny pictures, and I literally, I almost lost it. And so, there were like some adults there. I was definitely not an adult. And so these adults were turning like, shh, because I could hardly, when you're young, you just can't see. So then 2 years later, when they asked me, hey, come and hear our guru, Swami, I thought, oh, this is going to be another one of those. But I like the devotees. I just knew the devotees. I thought anyone who would shave their head and go out in public must be very sincere. And so I walked in. In those days, this is 1969. It was just, everything was like experience and consciousness. And so when I walked in, I wanted to experience it. Like, if I'm going to go there, I want to experience it. And so it was in this, there's this beautiful little hall. And I walked in with some friends. We walked in, and everyone sat down in the chairs. And I told my friends, no, I want to experience this. So I walked up to the front and sat down on the floor with the devotees. And then Prabhupada came in. And as soon as I saw him, I just knew, oh, this is very serious. Because Prabhupada, he came in, he was probably surrounded by, Vishnu Jana Swami, he wasn't saying Vishnu Jana and Tamal Krishna, actually. And so he was surrounded by these devotees, and my first impression, the first time in this life I saw Prabhupada, was he is like a commander. I just knew this person has authority. And in those days, we didn't think anyone had authority. Our parents, is that a joke? Our professors, clueless. No one had the government, that's a bad joke. So, for us, no one had authority. But as soon as I saw Prabhupada, I knew he has authority. He just seemed like he walked like this natural commander. And that was my first impression. And then Prabhupada came, and there was a little stage set up. He sat on the Vyasa asana, which in American Sanskrit is the Vyasa-san. So he sat on the Vyasa asana, and the kirtan started. I didn't tell you the story before, did I? No. The kirtan started, and you can imagine the devotees. They were all young. They were all my age. They were just like 20, 21, 22, or like that. And because Prabhupada was there, they were just so ecstatic. They just began dancing, and I had never experienced ecstatic religion. I just went to the synagogue and Shema Yisrael, thank you. Now sit down. And so, just like this nice sedate service. I loved the singing, the cantor. It was beautiful. I loved it. I still do. But this was ecstatic. The devotees were dancing and jumping, and then Prabhupada got up off his seat and began dancing and jumping. And then I thought, oh my God, I just knew that I was witnessing something extraordinary, because at that time, that was 1969, early 69, Prabhupada was 72 and a half years old. Which at that time, at my age of 20, 72 and a half was like 7,930. And so And when Prabhupada started dancing, the devotees went berserk. I mean, the devotees just went completely mad with ecstasy. And I remember I was in the middle of it, and I just saw bodies flying all around and leaping. And I was right in the middle of it, and I was just like... And I always tell this story because it's true. I remember there was one moment when I actually became completely disoriented. It's like Arjuna says in the Gita, when he sees the universal form, Disho na jane, I no longer know what the directions are, like what's up, what's down. And I actually thought to myself, are the devotees on the floor, on the ceiling, or on the walls? Or I just saw these bodies flying all around me. And I, to be honest, was not that ecstatic. I mean, I was chanting, but then in my heart, Krishna told me, I mean, I actually understood in my heart that these people are actually practicing, they're following principles. What are you doing? You're just a hog. You're just trying to enjoy the world. And so I knew I didn't deserve it. I knew that I wasn't feeling the ecstasy because I hadn't earned it. Somehow I understood that. And so, but it was such a hippie time. Do you know what black lights, like with the posters, black lights, like the hippies had? You don't know that anymore. What?
Violet, ultraviolet.
Yeah. So it was such a hippie time that the devotees were giving out a little souvenir and so they gave out was like a poster of Narada Muni that was red and purple and blue that you had to put that light. And that was a souvenir for the program. But so your original question was.
When you got confusion.
Oh, yes. So no, no. The answer is no. I don't think I ever thought for a moment that, I mean, I always knew it's just the same God. And I felt actually that finally my how should I put it? My sincere Jewish devotion had really been blessed. That now I could really understand the meaning of those songs that I love so much, and still do, actually. I still love those songs. And so, so I could never reject Judaism because I first found God there. It's just, there's no reason. I mean, it's not, how could I reject my experience with God? Or hearing stories about people who loved God. I mean, how could you reject it? So rather, I felt that finally I'm learning about what it all means. About what it really means and who God really is. And so, yeah. I never felt any conflict. I felt, I just felt so happy that and it was just so obvious to me, I could see it, that in all these religions are worshiping the same God, but that, the way I put it is like in our tradition, Vishnu is God at the office and Krishna is God at home. So just like, for example, my father owned these stores, and so sometimes I'd go help him work in the store. And so, he was always a loving father, but at the store, he had to be the store owner. He had to take care of the customers, and he had to, he's more serious. So that was the Vishnu form of my father. But then at home, he was just my father. So, these things about loving God and, all this sectarian stuff, it's really... it's just wrong. Like, for example, there's one that famous Psalm of David. In English, they translated in the King James Version, "The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want." I mean, that still inspires me. I mean, I sometimes almost brings me to tears. I mean, even today, when I read that, I just find it thrilling. And so, as souls, it's not that when you go to heaven, it's like there's a joke in America that some guy goes to heaven and he's being shown heaven and then he sees this big wall in heaven. You know that joke? there's a big wall, and so he says, why is that wall there? Oh, and then the angel tells him, oh, the Christians live behind that wall. Well, why? They think they're the only ones here. So, I mean, so obvious, or I guess it could be also certain Jewish people could also be behind the wall. So, the idea is that when you go to heaven, you're just a pure soul. You have no ethnic thing. There's no, material race or ethnicity. It's just all pure souls. There aren't Jewish neighborhoods and Christian neighborhoods in heaven. It's just, we're all pure souls. So down here as a human being, of course there are different things, but no, it's all that I was so thrilled to see that I was approaching the God of all religions. So, no, never had a problem with that. Oh, we'll go. That's my Mr. Singh, my driver. You know that because in India, and you take any taxi in North India, and it's Mr. Singh, because they have a monopoly on all they drive all the buses and they drive all the taxis. Yes. So thank you all very much. And thank you for asking questions and saving me from that.